Welcome then folks to the last already of all 10 builds in my special projects pack number 5, and we are leaving off with another rally build for the Alpine A110. This is another RGT class rally car, much like of course the one that I did for the Porsche 911. Incidentally, this can actually run a pretty similar lap to that 911, which is reassuring for me as the builder, because at least that means it should be pretty accurate to how they compare. But I will say that this one is perhaps a little bit more challenging than the Porsche, not to drive, it's pretty forgiving, but to really get that best lap out of it, because of course being mid-engine rear-wheel drive, the Porsche has its own challenges, this one is a different challenge, and this one I think you almost have to push it a bit harder than you would initially think to really get the most out of it. As far as the livery, of course, I will have put on screen that you can grab it via the link in the description, but the reason why this one really jumped out to me, of course I was looking for a rally design, naturally. This one, though, immediately evoked for me the Mitsubishi FTO Tavon Trampio race car in white and blue from Gran Turismo 2. It was always one of my favourite cars as a kid. I love the livery. Very underrated car for probably many people in the community, although especially in recent years it's become a lot more popular, and this just immediately evoked that for me. Now we are using the real specs of the real RGT car, at least from what I could find, which is 300 horsepower and 1080 kilos, and I completely happened across this livery while just looking for an inspired rally livery on the community, so it really is nice to find ones like this. I then looked it up online, and of course it is a real car, which is very cool. So you want your stage 1 weight. As far as the club sports, the high lift cams, we've got the power restrictor, of course the dirt tyres and the ballast. You can use these cars of course as tarmac rally builds if you want to, but I do need to always highlight, I didn't build them for that. So I can't speak to how it handles on the tarmac because I only built it for dirt. So it may be awful on the tarmac, you'll have to try it and find out I guess. As far as the diff, that is of course fully customised. For the racing stuff we've got the anti-lag, fairly naturally, the racing silencer, filter, manifold pads, and of course discs. Like I said before, doesn't really matter what discs you go for. We've got the racing clutch and flywheel, suspension, transmission. For the extreme stuff, likewise with the brakes if you want to go for that. I actually haven't fitted these as I usually would for a rally car. There's no particular reason why I didn't, aside from the fact that I thought, with a mid-engine rear-wheel drive layout, more steering angle, and an even lighter, even more responsive handbrake, probably isn't really going to be the issue, because those things to me are more so like a four-wheel drive build, because they increase your manoeuvrability. Whereas with rear-wheel drive, not having enough manoeuvrability doesn't tend to be the problem. It tends to be keeping the manoeuvrability to a minimum, ironically. Then for the ultimate stuff, that is not used on this particular build, so pretty simple to do. Similar numbers even to the standard car, apart from the weight being a bit lower, of course. And even in real life, RGT cars aren't really that crazy as far as their numbers. So of course we've got the dirt tyres fitted. For the suspension, 120mm. Might sound lower than you'd think for a rally car, but it looks about right. If you look at real rally cars, they're actually not as high off the ground, excuse me, as you might think. We've got 5 on anti-roll, 33 for the compression on the dampers, 44 for the rebound, 2.9 for the frequency, 3 degrees of camber, which is higher than I would usually have for a rally car, but again, mid-engine rear-wheel drive. For tow, we've got 0.5 out on the front, 0.20 in on the rear. As far as the diff, my preference for this one is 10, 20 and 50. Give it a try if you don't like it, or even if you do and just want to try other things. Of course, that's the beauty of a tutorial video. You can just create a second setting sheet up here and duplicate it and then change things to compare yours to mine. That's part of the beauty of it. Then as far as the transmission, I've got it on 260, which probably seems quite high for kilometers an hour even. That's up around 160 miles an hour, which of course for a 300 horsepower rally car, you're not going to be doing that often, if at all. The reason why I've done it though is, like with a front wheel drive car, and I said this in my build for the Polo, I sometimes feel like longer gearing helps the car to kind of use those gears rather than just frantically bouncing off the red line all the time trying to find traction. And of course part of that is throttle control, but part of it is having a gear which allows you that freedom to breathe. At least that's my theory on it. And in terms of how the physics work in the game at least. You want 66 kilos of ballast to bring us up to the real weight. I've put that all the way to the front, which brings us closer to a 50-50, but it's still a fair way off at 47.53. Then as far as the ECU, of course that is normal on this one. For the downforce, I've got the highest, both front and rear. Anti-lag, of course, is turned on. Like I've said before, I'll leave it to you as to how strong you want it. And of course, for the rest, you can see what we've already done. So pretty simple build. And even the point level is actually not that high. 565 or just under is quite modest for a car that's potentially as quick as this one is, being very, very lightweight with that small capacity, high revving, thumpy engine. So of course, all that remains is to take it out on the dirt and show you what it can do. Now, as I said, in terms of using this car, you do need to treat it, of course, differently, much like with the Porsche. I will say, and I haven't driven the Porsche in a while, and I know that physics and updates can change, but the Porsche to me was surprisingly forgiving. It's still one of my favourite rally builds that I've done, because you don't really expect it to be that good. This one, on the other hand, it's not difficult to drive, it's actually, as I said earlier on, quite forgiving. It's a very compact car. Of course, Alpine has a rally history anyway, so it's appropriate that this would exist. It's almost like you have to actually push the car a bit harder than you would think. You also need to really flow into the corner and then allow it to kind of swing out. And what I mean by that is, try and get the steepest possible angle into the corner as you can, almost like you're trying to clip the inside wall, and then allow the car to kind of roll onto its power with a wide runoff. So as with most rear-wheel drive rally cars, I would definitely say that they are more suited to a slightly wider rally track with more flowing corners, such as here. Whereas like Fisherman's Ranch, for example, they're not as ideal because it's very tight, very technical corners, and you're constantly going to be bouncing around on the red line through the gears. So you have to pick your battles with cars like this. And of course, being a semi-tarmac rally car anyway, that is going to be part of their forte, although as I said, I haven't done that here. As far as overall using it, like I said, it's a similar lap time to the Porsche, so the potential is definitely there, but I will absolutely say you really do have to finesse the car a lot more to get it close to what the Porsche can do quite easily. So if you put the time into it, it's a very rewarding little car. I certainly love the way it looks. It's a very convincing looking car, but at the same time, it won't necessarily be to everyone's taste, you know? It's not difficult to drive, it's just that some people might not find the car worth it enough when the Porsche is just naturally that little bit easier and a little bit quicker. So I'll leave it down to you. Of course, if you have joined me for this journey throughout the week, 4 special projects, I hope you've enjoyed these 10 builds. I hope that among these are some of your favourites perhaps so far. For me, certainly the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup. Of course, I will be returning again in future for special projects pack number 6. So of course, stick around for that. And hopefully we will see whatever Polyphony gives us officially, quote unquote, at the end of the month in terms of updates. So thank you for joining me once again on the journey. I'll see you next time. And for now, as always, thanks for watching.